Wonderful, everyone. Thank you for the patience and for the wait. All of you are able to see me. All of you are able to see my screen, and all of you are able to hear me. A quick yes on the chat box. Wonderful, great, awesome, great. That's all that is needed for the webinar to begin and learning to happen. Great. So welcome everyone. Thank you for taking our time for this webinar. Next 1 hour, we'll be discussing some very, very interesting aspects about how we can go about driving strategic HR processes and systems, and how exactly it's being done by best of organizations. So very interesting webinar this is. And this webinar is brought to you by CHRMP. CHRMP stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional. CHRMP is a premier HR certification, which is globally recognized. It is a competency-based certification. We are talking about 5,600 test centers in 190 countries. Our certification partner is prestigious Pearson VUE. And we are talking about more than 10,000 strong alumni base. So if you just go to LinkedIn and type CHRMP, you would be able to see participants and CHRMPians from different industries at different levels, right from HR directors to VPHRs to HRBPs to talent acquisition folks to L&D folks to HR executives and HR trainees have gone about doing CHRMP at different levels. My name is Animesh Rai. I am the lead facilitator for today's webinar. I come with about 17 years of work experience in human resource management. CHRMP has primarily consulted number of Fortune 10, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies in terms of helping them set their HR processes, better their HR systems, conduct HR audits, and also go about creating HR analytics setup. I have been part of a lot of work that CHRMP has gone about doing, and I come up with that experience, and I would be sharing that experience in terms of what's changing when it comes to driving human resource aspects. And I hope you would be able to enjoy this session and learn a lot by end of this certification, right? Now, I would like to make a promise, as I always do before I start a webinar, and the promise is that by end of this webinar, you would have a very, very clear idea and understanding of how strategic practices are driven, right? And in return, and it's a big promise because first of all, to create this element of understanding strategy is not that easy. Plus we have limited time, but I would ensure that this is something that we are able to understand and get. But in return, I need your time and I need your attention. And I would request everyone to be away from distraction, because each slide is loaded with information and your participation is what would make take you the best of what we discussed today. Right. I also have a small gift and a surprise for people who stay till end. So hang on and till then enjoy the learning. Now, driving strategic HR practices, right? So there are a lot of elements, a lot of thoughts that go into creating strategy, and strategy leads to implementation. So we would largely understand how exactly it's being planned by organization and how exactly HR is getting aligned with driving HR, strategic HR practices, right? But before that, let me quickly burst some myths about strategic HR, because a lot of people want to get into strategic HR. They see that when you talk about strategic HR, I mean, we are not talking about a job role, but the idea is that people want to grow in their careers and get to a level where from execution they are able to move to planning, and that is something that what they talk about. And there are a lot of myths around strategic HR. So first about HR as a role is that HR is more of an administrative role, or only an administrative role, which is absolutely true. I think HR is doing much more than what's needed. Change management initiatives being driven by human resource professionals. We are talking about balancing different work forces, different age groups, right from millennials to baby boomers to Gen X and Gen Y are being taken care of, and policies and culture initiatives are being taken care of. So that is something that is being done. HR has evolved. It's It's right from a person getting into the organization to a person going out of the organization. Entire support function is human resource management. So it's much more than an administrative function. Second is, which is more to do with the kind of work that we do. A lot of times HR professionals feel that you have to be a specialist to become part of strategy in human resource management. There is no denying that if you're a specialist, then the way you move up is faster, quicker, depending on what you bring to the job and what you are able to achieve and deliver for the organization. However, when we talk about even generalist functions, or even when we talk about functions which have an overview of different verticals within human resource, I think to a great extent, a lot of strategy is being derived out of that as well. So a lot of times when people make this choice of being part of a specialist vertical, yes, they can grow up to the head of department for that particular vertical, or maybe director training, or maybe VP training, etc. But when we talk about an overall view of what human resource looks like, it's very, very important that you understand what are the best practices in all verticals in human resource, and there is a lot of what's happening in HR otherwise, right? So that is something which is an important aspect. And when we talk about another element is that, now this is very interesting, and this is something that we would decipher today, right? Is that strategic HR practices has nothing to do with how HR department gets structured within an organization, right? So in fact, a lot of strategic HR today organizations is largely in terms of how departments are structured and aligned, right? So there is this whole new element of HR business partner that you have been hearing and seeing that's coming across, and then we have the corporate HR model or the traditional HR model, which has been there throughout last 30-40 years. What we have been seeing, and a lot of organizations are transitioning, and you must be seeing a lot of jobs flying around, and a lot of designations, and a lot of people whom you know with these fancy titles, etc. But in fact, a lot of times when I'm interacting with people who are HR business partners, etc., they do not have a very, very clear idea in terms of how they are positioned within the organization. So I think one element that we have to really, really crack today is how do you drive strategic HR practices, right? And that is something that we would figure out today, right? But before that, I would just like to draw a small, not a small, maybe a new understanding of how we see HR, which is very, very important, because we will just visit basics for maybe 5 minutes, and then we will get back to our understanding of what how organization structures are driving strategic practices, right? So let's quickly talk about evolution of human resource. I think one of the most important but kind of boring word is evolution. Now, when we talk about evolution of human resource management, it really sounds like something very, very conceptual, but my job is to make it more meaningful for you. So I will try doing that. So when we talk about evolution of human resource, we'll have different perspectives to how evolution has happened in human resource management, right? And the first perspective that we will have is the functional perspective, right? Now, when somebody asks what is human resource management, I mean, a definite 10-mark question in anybody who's doing a BBA or an MBA or otherwise any university curriculum, or the difference between HRD and HRM, right? We really doesn't think of how organizations are seeing HR as a department. So when we say the functional perspective, we are talking about what is the view that the organization has for HR department. And we are not, an organization doesn't necessarily have a view only for HR department, because there are different departments. You have operations, and you have sales and marketing, and you have HR, and you have finance, and you have accounts, and you have facility management, and you have administration. You have different departments that organization have to go about managing, right? So from a functional perspective, where does human resource stand, which is very, very important, right? And then that leads us to breaking all the departments, all the verticals within HR in terms of how they are aligned with organization. And that makes us to understand that organizations or organization heads or CEOs or board of directors largely see, or from a functional perspective, two kinds of departments, two kinds of functions, which is core function and support function. And when we are talking about core function, we are largely talking about organizations where we have the role, the designation, the department aligned with the nature of business of organization. For example, if we are talking about aviation, and if we are talking about cabin crew, and if we are talking about pilots, and if we are talking about ground staff, these are all in line with the nature of business of organization, which is aviation. If we are talking about healthcare, and we are talking about doctors, and we are talking about nurses, we are talking about these roles and these designations and the departments aligned with the nature of business of organization. And if we are talking about a software engineer in an organization, then we are talking in let's say Oracle or in Accenture, then we are talking about somebody who is in line with the nature of business of organization, which is software services or software development, right? So the moment we talk about operations in any organization, the department of operations, I mean, which is basically in banking, it's the bankers, and in software companies or IT companies, it's the software developers or software testers. And if we are talking about aviation, we are talking about cabin crew, pilots, etc. The operations of any department is in line with the nature of business of organization. And even if you look at sales and marketing, what is this guy in bank trying to sell you? Maybe insurance, and or maybe savings account opening, or current bank account opening, or some kind of investment, right? So basically, when you look at even sales and marketing, or if what is in Unilever Limited, companies are looking at what is the advertising or the branding department trying to do? It is basically in line with the nature of services that they are offering or products that they are offering. So anything which is in line with the nature of business of organization, whether it's services, whether it's products, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's operations, they are core functions for the organization because they are directly aligned with the business. And then you have verticals. You have verticals like finance and accounts. So if you look at, let's say, Lufthansa, we are not talking about Lufthansa Airlines or KLM or British Airways or Air India. We are not talking about these being a finance and an accounts company, though finance and accounts is a very, very important part for all of it. Or if we are talking about, let's say, Accenture, we are not talking about admin department or facility management department and Accenture representing facility management and admin department. These are important functions. Obviously, I mean, facilities have to be good. They have to be clean. They have to, transport has to work, and administration has to work really well for organizations to function. But they are not in line with nature of business of organizations. So they are support functions, right? And when we talk about human resource management, I think one of the most diversified support function is HR, right? So the best understanding that we can create is that HR is a support function. Right? And it is very, very different from our definitional understanding, the definitions that we have gone about studying, something that probably has helped us score marks in universities, but actually on ground, if you look at from a functional understanding of human resource, we are a support function, and we are one of the most diversified support functions. From a time a person gets into the organization, which is recruitment, to a time when a person leaves the organization, which is exit interview, the entire employee support cycle is HR. So whether it's learning and development, or whether it's compensation and benefit, or whether it's performance management, or whether it's training and development, whether it's personal management, whether it's employee relation, employee engagement, all of it are touch points for creating awesome support to the working population in an organization. So this is first level of understanding we can create about human resource, which is different from otherwise what we see. We are a support function, right? And now we are becoming a strategic support function, right? Which I would again talk about in terms of what's driving this, right? So I would say we were a support function. Now we are becoming a strategic support function in terms of how exactly things are shaping up. Now, when we talk about the process perspective, right? From a process perspective, if we have to understand human resource better, how from a process perspective, human resource has evolved, then you will see human resource evolving from task-based to skill-based to competency-based, right? And remember when I talked about CHRMP being a competency-based HR certification, this is how HR has evolved, right? If you look at HR systems and processes, and HR runs on systems and processes, it runs on forms and documents, and you have interview evaluation form, and you have training need analysis form, you have performance management form, and you have employee surveys, and you have a number of things. And largely, when you talk about how they have been structured, largely, right, or even for example, how job descriptions and how job data has been collated. Initially, it was task based. It was about defining what a person would do in an organization, and that led to whether a performance management system or a recruitment process or a training process or whatever process, even compensation to a great extent in terms of decision on compensation was about the kind of task involved, right? And then organization realized that just by writing the task, it's very difficult to make it very, very measurable. So it's not only about task being written, it is somebody's skill to maybe going about executing these tasks. And then the whole concept of skill-based HR came into picture. And that's why suddenly you had teamwork and leadership and initiative ability and problem-solving ability and creativity and innovation, and all these skills became important, and they became the hiring criteria or training criteria or performance appraising criteria, right? However, even when it became skill-based HR, and there are a lot of examples to it. For example, in IT industry, a lot of software engineers who are working are not necessarily from a background of IT, but if they are being tested on analytical skill and logical ability, you see them having the skill and skill being developed ability. If you identify that, which means it is something that can be developed, which means technically these people can be hired and they can be put into the kind of role that you are looking at, right? And that's a pure evidence of what skill-based HR looks like, right? However, even in this element, there is no guarantee to the successful outcome of what organization would ideally want in terms of the kind of work that we do, right? Now, that makes them think of evolution of an HR process, which measures everything against successful outcome, right? So if they can go about setting up an HR process which can identify behaviors of individuals and human beings, which when shown or which when done lead to successful outcome or completion of a given task or of a given work, then it's awesome, because we are not writing down what a person has to do, nor we are measuring somebody's skill to do it. We are making the whole HR process very, 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 very tangible, right? And if we are able to make the whole process very tangible, then the way you would hire, the way you would train, the way you would run performance management, the way you would come up with the compensation benefit strategy would completely change. Which means an interview evaluation form in task-based HR or skill-based HR and competency-based HR would be very different from each other. And when we talk about performance management form, it would be very, very different when you talk about task-based, skill-based or competency-based HR, right? So competency-based HR practices are very, very important. A simple example would be departments have gone about changing their names. You had training and development. Now organizations are increasingly calling it learning and development. Why are they calling it learning and development? Or in fact, now they are calling it talent development, right? Or recruitment and selection is increasingly being called talent acquisition, right? Why is it being called talent acquisition? The reason it being called talent acquisition or talent development or learning and development is, what is the outcome of training? The outcome of training is learning. Now, if you go about setting up a process which measures training, it would be very different if you go about setting up a process to measure learning, right? Because then it is about learning implementation, it is about change in behavior, it is about result, right? So the kind of training impact that you would measure would be more than just giving a feedback form in a scale of 1 to 5. Go about rating somebody the trainer or the training, right? It would go beyond that, right? Similarly, when you talk about talent acquisition, it would be it would be much more deeper. It would be much more because recruitment would end when a position gets closed, but talent acquisition would go beyond position being closed. It would go up to the aspect of time to productivity, right? And how much time a person took to be productive, and you would go about creating processes and systems which goes about measuring that to prove that the talent acquisition department has done well, right? So the world best of organizations today have moved to the idea of competency based HR. It's so new that a lot of HRs, even when they are working on competency based processes, right, they're not aware what competency actually means, right? And a lot of times I have in when I'm conducting sessions, even for top organizations, I have individuals who come and HR professionals with experience who come and say that when I say what is competency, they say that okay, competency is nothing but skill of somebody to do something, right? So it's very, very. I'm sorry. Competency is a very, very big topic for me to handle right now. But just to highlight you that when it comes to evolution of HR, things and processes have changed, and because a lot of times organizations do not really spend on upskilling HRs, we HR professionals are largely left with our own ability to go about learning and acquiring knowledge, right? We normally learn from our experience and what our supervisors tell us or what the business need is. But that is very specific to the organization. It has nothing to do with what are the best practices and the best of organizations in the world that they are doing. So we have the onus to understand and get deeper in terms of how competency-based HR gets structured and gets functioned, right? Wonderful. So again, from a functional perspective, it's important for us to understand that HR is a support function and becoming a more and more strategic support function. And from a perspective of evolution of HR practices, we are the process. We are talking about HR being a competency-based HR process, which is very, very important, right? And competency-based HR also practices are also very, very from a very, very structural level, making HR very, very strategic, right? Now, when we move to our journey of what has happened in human resource management, I think this diagram suggests the best of what we are seeing, right? In fact, the whole idea of human resource came in earlier. Historically, only army were employing people in great numbers, and then you had industrial revolution, and then that's when a lot of HR started getting. There are a lot of employees that started getting hired, and they need to be taken care of, and their file need to be maintained, and attendance need to be maintained. So largely, and then democracy came in the world, and then there were worker rights and all that. So you had labor manager and welfare officer to a great amount of time, and then HR actually is a new term, about 30, 40 years old, right? Earlier it was called personal management. In fact, you still have universities giving you degrees and post-graduation degrees in PM and IR, personal management and industrial relation, right? So then human resource evolved the way we see it, the way we understand it in terms of different departments, etc. But the future and the thought of HR playing a much more vital role is what is being seen in the last 10, 15 years, and especially in the last 5 years, right? So two elements have completely changed the strategic HR journey. And one is the evolution of the HRBP model, which is human resource business partner model. And the second one is the evolution of HR analytics, right? So these are two elements which are actually driving strategic HRM today. And one of it is something that we will try understanding today, which is getting deeper into what HRBP stands for, right? So great. With this, let's quickly talk about HR models. And remember, when I was talking about myth 3, which is HR structure has nothing, how the HR department structure has nothing to do with how strategic HR becomes. It has absolutely to do everything in terms of how strategic HR becomes, right? So when we talk about organizations having their HR department structured, you can have two referral points. One is the traditional HR model, or what you also call is a corporate HR model. And the second one is the strategic HR model or strategic HR structure, which is called the HRBP model, Human Resource Business Partner model, right? And today we would get deeper into HRBP to understand this. But before I get deeper into that, I think it's important that we understand what traditional model looks like. So we all have an idea of what traditional model looks like, but I will quickly, in 2 minutes, I will cover this up so that we are able to save some time, but we are able to create a base so that we understand how to understand how a better model exists. It's important to revisit what already exists, isn't it? Right. So when we are talking about a traditional HR model or the corporate HR model, you are seeing this. There are different verticals in HR. You have recruitment and selection, you have training and development, and you have compensation, benefit, payroll, you have performance management, you have employee or industrial relation, and you have administrative HR. Now, these are 6 key verticals within human resource management, which are doing various things what a HR professional does, right? And if you look at all this model, depending on the size of the organization or the industry, you have specialist verticals or you have generalist verticals. For example, if we are talking about a 50 people company or a 100 people company, maybe 1 or 2 HRs are enough. So only these 1 or 2 HRs can do everything. For example, they can do recruitment also and training also and maybe performance also and employee relation also, and another HR can take care of comp and ben and administrative part of it. So you don't need technically too many HRs in terms of managing the entire human resource vertical. However, when we talk about a big organization, for example, if we are talking about an organization with 10,000 people, 50,000 people, 1 lakh people, then each of this vertical largely would become a specialist vertical, which means recruitment would be a specialist vertical and training would be a specialist vertical. And then you would have training officers and you would have HR recruiters, etc., that you would go about seeing, right? So largely, this is what you would go about seeing in most of the organizations that you are working for, because this is the kind of work that HR does, right? Now traditional HR is having some good element, and we have done some good job in traditional HR. So just because there is a better model or there is something new exists, it doesn't mean what's traditional is bad, right? So remember, traditional is not bad, right? So what have we achieved over the last 40 years? What we have achieved over the last 40 years is that we have had administrative focus. And we have execution and implementation excellence. So basically, we have been able to understand file management, process management really, really well. And we have largely been involved into executing of things. So for example, business comes and tells us, we need 10 people to be hired at this designation in next 30 days. So we have gone about implementing that, right? We are good with execution and implementation, and organization comes and tells us that run a training program on communication. We go and run the training program on communication. We send mails to all the leaders of the organization, and all the leaders nominate whom they feel need improvement in communication skill or whatever, not necessarily improvement, somebody may be nominated as a reward also, but then we have gone about then executing it, calculating feedback, giving it back to business, saying that the feedback was 4.5 out of 5, the training went off well, right? So we have had administrative focus in terms of file management, in terms of process management, etc. And we have played largely a role of execution and implementation, and we have excelled in it. It's not that we have not excelled, right? But at the same time, we have largely driven outsourcing in an organization, which has been our achievement, and we should be proud of it, because we have gone about outsourcing almost everything. In fact, if you look at a lot of jobs being outsourced from countries from West to Asia and to India and to Africa and to Philippines and to different countries in this world, that's largely because we understood the cost element and we were able to successfully outsource this entire thing, right? Not only that, we have not only outsourced jobs from high cost place to a low cost place, we have also gone about outsourcing HR processes itself. For example, recruitment has been outsourced to placement consultants. Background verification has been outsourced to BGP verification agencies. Training has been outsourced to training vendors. payroll to a great extent is being outsourced to third-party agencies. Subcontracting is being done and contracting is being done. So we have really led outsourcing. I would say a revolution of outsourcing in terms of looking at what all can be outsourced, including HR jobs, right? That is something that have gone about getting outsourced, right? At the same time, there has been automation focus, because end of the day, HR is a overhead, it's a cost. Organization may be more happy if there is a robot whom they don't have to pay monthly compensation and salaries, and the person can come and do it, or the robot can come and do it for you. But largely that's not possible yet. So what is being done then? Through technology, majority of processes are being automated. For example, if earlier file was being used for attendance management, today you have fingerprints and you have scanners and you have all that. I mean, that's all part of automation, isn't it? Right? There are a lot of other things that have also been automated, but largely this is what has traditional HR achieved in last 40 years. And this is good, right? This is good. That is something we should be all proud of. But at the same time, all that we have done through this is largely support, not strategy. In fact, even if you look at these broad meetings that happens with the director HR or head HR or VP HR, and when he or she is strategizing, even at that point of time, it's largely about how we can execute, with largely focus on two things, right? Business has given us goals. Let's go about executing it in least cost and minimum time possible, right? So the focus has been to reduce cost and reduce the time taken to do something, but it is not really in terms of being strategic from a line of business point of view. What is our contribution in line of business apart from catering to business needs and becoming this execution machinery which goes about executing whatever need business has, right? So this has been a drawback, right? We have largely been support and we have not been strategic, right? And at the same time, our KPIs, our KRAs are largely to our departmental goals, which in some manner, again, largely gets associated with organizational goals on 2 or 3 parameters. For example, again, cost and productivity and culture, etc. Right? But it's limited. It's limited. It's the vision is not that deep as probably operations would have, or as probably sales and marketing would have, or as even finance and accounts will have, right? So that has been there. And as I said, we have been more of an implementer, and we have more of in terms of, and we have certainly not been business result oriented, right? We have been result oriented to what has mattered to us, but business outcome orientation has been missing in the entire HR department, right? So this has been, there has been good things about the traditional model, and there has been some limitation about the traditional model, right? Now, when we talk about driving strategic HR through the strategic HR model, and maybe I would call it more of strategic HR model than HRBP model, because HRBP gets limited by the designation that you are seeing floating around in job sites, or a lot of you may be working as HRBPs, right? So when we talk about driving strategic HRM, let me make it meaningful for you in terms of how does this department get structured that it becomes strategic in nature, which is interesting, isn't it? Right? So when we talk about driving strategic HRM practices via HRBP or via the strategic HR model, we are talking about the entire HR department now being broken down into 3 divisions, right? The entire HR department is being broken down into 3 divisions. The first division is HR operations, or one of the division is HR operations. The second division are the COEs, right? And the third division is HRBP, right? So that's why I would call it strategic HR model, so that I don't concur and clash with the term HRBP. So when we talk about strategic HR model, you are seeing breaking it into 3 key departments, which is HR operations, which is the COE, which is Center of Excellence, and the HRBP department, right? Now, what does HR operations do? Very interesting. Huh? So now remember, HR has two kinds of role, right? One is people facing, and the other one is administrative or non-people facing roles, right? So you can call it front-end HR or you can call it back-end HR. And when we call it front-end HR and back-end HR, or when we call it people-facing or non-people facing role, anything and everything that comes as part of the back-end HR or non-people facing role, largely to a great extent, right, becomes part of HR operations, right? So anything that was supposed to do with files and documents and processes and systems and whatnot becomes part of HR operations. So if when it comes to record keeping, when it comes to timekeeping, when it comes to payroll, when it comes to vendor management, when it comes to background verification, when it comes to compliance of labor laws, when it comes to driving HR audits, this is what HR operations and or HR administrations, or sometimes you also call it HR shared services, right, is doing, right? So anything and everything. So and this is good because see, earlier what was happening is part of it was under, so if it was vendor management, it was within training folks were managing their vendors and recruitment folks were managing their vendors and somebody else was managing their vendors. And if it was record keeping, then there was record keeping by an X department and record keeping by a Y sub department within HR. All this was happening. Now, when you bring all of it at one place, one thing that you do is that you start working towards achieving administrative excellence, right? Which is very, very important because if now it's about doing things in the best possible manner, it's achievable because people will learn from each other. Different processes within this would learn from each other. I mean, one thing that is not written here is visa and travel help desk. They may have certain processes which payroll can learn from, and payroll may have certain processes which timekeeping can learn from, and record keeping can have certain processes which background verification can learn from. So basically, when it comes to bringing all of it together, then bringing in quality of work, right, is really much. So imagine somebody who would be heading this department, how well versed he or she will be in terms of what would work and what would not work and what can work better and how can steps be reduced and how can processes be less stringent. You can absolutely aim at administrative excellence, which is really good because all of it is coming at one place. So basically that is what HR operations is doing. HR operations is largely going about doing all of it, right? At the same time, we are talking about center of excellence, right? When we talk about center of excellence, we are largely talking about people facing, also a strategic part of human resource management, right? And when we talk about center of excellence, we are talking about four elements within circle of excellence, which is very, very important. Now, these are largely part of what we call is people development, right? Or people alignment, right? Or we are talking about getting the best people in, right? So when we talk about talent development, when we talk about compensation benefit planning, when we talk about talent acquisition, and when we talk about reporting, and what was reporting few years back, and I have written reporting for a reason, to relate that reporting has led to HR analytics. So basically the fourth vertical that you are seeing here is actually HR analytics, right? But it started with initially reporting of data. For example, attrition data or absenteeism data or any other data was reported first. And later on, we got deeper into understanding, diagnosing, predicting, prescribing, etc. That is something that we did, right? So when we talk about center of excellence, we have to understand that when we talk about talent development, it is about people development, right? It is about skill development. It is about competency development. It is about cultural development. When we talk about compensation benefit planning, then we are talking about retention and motivation and reward and recognition and whether we have a lead strategy or a lag strategy or a match strategy with the industry. Very, very much to do with participation level, commitment level, from a cultural perspective, retention level, job satisfaction level, etc. that organizations are looking at. And when we are talking about talent acquisition, we are talking about people who are getting into the system and people who can lead to quality of work and people who can lead to job success, right? So it is about hiring talent. It's not about hiring, it's about hiring talent. And who is a talented person whom you hire who can lead to job success? Now remember this, who can lead to job success, which means even after a person is hired, number of things would matter, right? For example, one of the elements that matters is speed of competency of person in training, and they are being rated upon, right? Not only that, it is about the kind of quality of work the person does, the unit of work the person produces, right? The time of time to productivity that the person takes in to finally be productive as per performance standard of the company, right? So you are ensuring that talent is being acquired, right? That is something that you are talking about. And then when we are talking about HR analytics, right? HR analytics is playing a very, very vital role because it is driving what we call as data-driven HR practices. It is driving what we call as evidence-based HR practices, right? Without HRs are known for making gut-based decisions. In fact, if I meet 10 HR recruiters who have been in the industry for 2 to 5 years or more, or even HR talent acquisition heads, I think 8 out of 10 would tell me that within 30 seconds, they get to know whether a person is a good hire or not, right? So basically, that's a very, very bad statement to make being an HR, because what you do rest of the interview is just prove yourself right, because how can you go wrong, right? So there is confirmation bias, which is so certain. And that's not what we should go about doing. If it can happen to an interview, imagine from a gut-based or a field-based decision where all decisions can go be made. And I'm not saying these decisions are necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that you need better evidence to be sure of the decision that you have made. So whether, or you need evidence to even make decisions. So sometimes you would be not able to make decisions. At that point of time, you need evidence and data to make decisions. And sometimes you are making a decision. That time, if you have data backup and data tells you that go ahead and make this decision, nothing like it, right? So HR analytics absolutely goes about driving this. So any business problem, any business issue, any business decision, any HR specific work that comes across, it gives you enough data, enough input to go about making intelligent decisions. It helps you make intelligent decisions, which has a cycle of its own, and it's quite a vast topic. So again, I would not be able to really get into it, but then plays a very, very important role, and that's why HRBP and analytics are two big buzzwords in HR today, isn't it? Right? So guys, I will be taking all your questions before I move to the third vertical and start talking about it towards the end of the webinar, right? So any doubts or any questions that you are having, any clarifications, anything that you need from me in terms of information, please make a note of it. I'll be taking all your questions and I'll be taking it in the Q&A box. So you have a Q&A box. You can type any thoughts, any doubts, any questions that you may have in there, and you can park it for now. And when I finish the webinar, towards the end of the webinar, when the topic is done, I would be taking all your questions. So that's something going to happen, right? Wonderful. So what have we discussed, guys, so far? We have talked about driving strategic HR. We have busted some myths, and post-busting these myths, we have talked about evolution of HR and from a functional perspective, which is core and support. And we understood that HR is a support function, and how it is becoming strategic is something that we are discussing now. And then we talked about the process perspective, and we talked about task-based HR, skill-based HR, and competency-based HR. We dig little deeper into history in terms of how evolution of human resources happened, and we understood that human resources becoming strategic HR, and the reason is organization structure change of how HR department is structured within the organization. And we quickly visited the traditional model where we understood how exactly that is structured. And we talked about the benefits of a traditional model, or what we have achieved in last 40 years being in the corporate HR model or traditional model. And we also talked about the demerits. And now we are talking about the HRBP, or the strategic HR model, where we have understood that the entire department is broken down into 3 key verticals. One is HR operations, where all process related work, all file related work, all admin related work comes into picture, which leads to administrative excellence and process excellence. And then we talked about people facing role or front end HR coming under, or people developmental role coming under center of excellence, which is largely about talent development, compensation planning, talent acquisition, and analytics or reporting, whatever you call it, right? Now, this is the second part. Now, there is a third part as well, right? So the third part is the HRBP, right? HRBP, Human Resource Business Partner. Now, if you hear this term, which is called HRBP, what different things may come to your mind, isn't it? But if we have to create a deeper understanding of what HRBP is all about, let's look at this diagram, because this diagram says it all. And I would spend good 5 minutes in here to broaden your understanding in terms of what HRBP structure does. So HRBP as a department within HR is directly in between or in line with the management, the managers and employees, and the other HR functions on the other end, which is HR operations or HR shared services or talent development and talent acquisition and compensation benefit planning and HR analytics, right? So that is something that is there, right? But what HRBP is doing is that it is working along with business units to cater to all their HR needs that would help them in goal achievement, right? I would reiterate again this, right? HRBP is working along with BUs, which is business units, in terms of taking care of what the business needs, what the team needs, or what individual needs, or the business unit needs, in terms of their HR requirements, which can help them achieve their objectives or business goals in a better manner. Now, let me break it down with a couple of examples, right? So let's say I am HRBP 1 and I am supporting team A, right? Now, if I'm supporting team A, this is what has happened. There is a overall organizational exercise that has been done, balance scorecard has been done, and or even if it's not a balance scorecard, if it's OKR model or anything that you've gone about doing, organizations have gotten about breaking down organizational goals, and organizational goals have led to your departmental goals, and departmental goals have led to team goals, and team goals have been broken down into individual goals, right? Now, this is something that has already happened. Now, I am HRBP1, I am catering to team A, right? And I am supporting team A. So I go to team A, I sit with, and everybody is clear with the goals because department goals, team goals, everything has been set. Now I go to team A and they say, what are the goals that have been set for you, right? And then I understand those goals. And now I understand that fulfilling this goal is also my responsibility. And I have to support this team in whatever HR need this person has or this team has. So I start having interaction and understanding in terms of setting my goals to cater to that team goals. So what I understand is, for example, in my discussion with the team manager or team leader, I understand that, let's say it's a software company and it is in India and it is catering to a client in US. And what the team's leader is telling us is that everything is fine. The team is technically brilliant, but there is a huge communication problem. The guys are not good with communication, and when they're interacting with their American counterparts through video conferencing and through emails, they are not able to put things properly, assertively. They are not able to pitch work well. They are not able to understand the requirements in the right manner, and this is leading to a lot of dissatisfaction. And one of the goals that my team has to achieve is better CSAT scores, which is customer satisfaction scores. Now, how do I do this? Because I cannot look into each and every mail that is being sent. Please solve it for me. So now I go to, I get deeper into this problem, understand the details. I go back to talent development department, get the best folks who can probably solve this for the business, bring them on the table, bring the line manager on table, bring some employees on the table, go through some mails, some confusion, some cases that has happened, tell the talent development department to come up with a customized solution. Talent development comes up with a customized solution. It gets delivered. So for their team, it's only. And then that is something that a problem that gets solved, right? Or it's followed up and solved, right? Let's say I'm another example. Let's say I'm HRBP2 and I'm supporting line manager B. Now, line manager B is a sales manager, right? And when I go and I understand the goals, etc., 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 he tells me that there are big targets that the team has to achieve. And there is this reimbursement policy, which is causing a lot of concern because we have to fill our reimbursement form by 25th, and 25th is nearing month end, and there is a lot of sales pressure that they are under. In between, if they have to go about filling this reimbursement policy, it is something to worry about because it takes time and it's an irritant and people are complaining. It's just making the whole process a little more unhappy for everyone. Do something. So HRBP then goes back to compensation planning department and also involves HR operations. And creates a specific reimbursement policy which is applicable only for that department, for nobody else, right? But the problem is solved, right? So if all this while we have been thinking that there is one reimbursement policy, and if we have been thinking that there is one travel policy, and then we have been thinking that this is what HRs have been doing, it changes because it is about delivering customizable solutions to the business that assist them in their respective goal achievement, which means I, as an HRBP, my goal is your goal. So I will do anything to help you achieve your goal because that's my goal too, which means I am holding hand with the business in terms of achieving what the organization wants to achieve. And this is huge because this was never the case. And I'll tell you why, right? Because if earlier a business comes and tells you that go and hire 10 people. We need 10 people by end of this quarter as new hires. You would not necessarily need to agree on that. You may say that, okay, you may go to HR analytics department and you tell them that are 10 people needed because I feel that we are talking about too many people. Are we looking at creating a fat team or a fit team, right? And then HR analytics comes and does a workload analysis. And on workload analysis, they realize that the utilization levels for the team or for the manager or for the business is 60%. And it should be at least 80% for them to go about raising requests for more manpower. So you can go and tell the business. So you are not only helping organization save cost on manpower, you are also looking at creating a culture which promotes more efficiency and more productivity, right? And this is unlike what otherwise we would have seen, which means we are playing a much more strategic role. We are playing a much more structured role, much more business goal aligned role than what we were playing earlier. It does not matter whether you are catering as a HRBP, you are catering to a 50 people team on all their HR needs or 500 people team on all their L&D needs. These are all the ways different organizations may go about structuring their HRBP department. But the larger picture is that HRBP is aligned with organizational goals, which is very important. So whether it's case one where a communication training is not something which is open-ended and which is an open house where you're asking for nomination from manager, but it's about delivering a customized solution which solves a problem in the business, or whether it's creation of a reimbursement policy for a specific sales team, or whether it's telling a manager that you don't need 10 people, you need 8, right, or 6, or no, or none, is something that is being driven by HRBP in line with organizational goals. And this is a game changer for HR. And because now better decisions have to be made, analytics becomes also very important because HRBP along with analytics drives this through. Right. In fact, you should also check our HR analytics certification, which is quite comprehensive, a 12-week certification, right? So this is something that HRBP does. Now let's take a quick example here, right? Let's take a quick example here so that you are able to have a better understanding of what we are talking about. We are talking about a case discussion. We are in the case discussion. What happens is that there is an organization. I know this case very well. We really worked on this one with an organization to help them go about solving this problem. So ABC Corporation, there was a lot of loss of productivity, and this was largely because of absenteeism. And we are talking about 7.2% was the absenteeism rate compared to 2.5 or 3.5%, which was acceptable, right? So how would HRBP go about solving this problem? So probably HRBP would come along with analytics, and then they would calculate absenteeism rates and absenteeism rate for the whole organization and for departments and managers, and you will break it down in terms of all this, and so that you have a better idea, and then you will dig deeper into the problems. Absenteeism rate is normally calculated as total absent days divided by total number of work days worked by workforce into 100. For example, let's say we are talking about a 10 people company, and all the 10 people who are working took 1 day leave. So total absent days is 10. Total number of work days worked by workforce. So let's say Monday to Friday are working days, Saturday, Sunday are off days. So 5 days a week, almost 30 days, 22 days would be working. So 22 into 10 is the total number of work days that the workforce should work. So 10 divided by 220 into 100 is something that you would calculate absenteeism as. So once you calculate absenteeism as I said, you'd calculate for department and manager, etc. And then you dig deeper into reasons in terms of why are people absent, and there would be some analysis that needs to be done. All that once you do, you realize that there are the reasons why people are being absent are these. 40% people are being absent because of personal illness, 21% because of family issues, 20% because of personal needs, 14% because of entitlement mentality, 5% because of stress, right? Now, these are the reasons why people are going about taking leaves, right? When we talk about solving it, so now you go about creating a structure in terms of how to solve it, because now you know the reasons why people are taking leave, right? So for example, what this organization did was very interesting. It did a threefold activity. First was prioritization. So there were already employee relation and employee engagement activities that were happening, but something that was more prioritized towards these reasons were given more budgets, and they were prioritized, right? So, for example, if we are talking about personal illness and there was doctor on campus already coming in, and it was once a month, now it became once a week, right? Or if it was, let's say, preventive health checkup, if that was being done once in a year, it started being done twice a year or thrice a year or once a quarter, right? So you started prioritizing that, right? And not only that, I mean, for example, if you realized by analyzing that there are family issues, for example, there were women employees from age group of 28 to 35 are being absent because of childcare issues. You tied up with daycare or brought them to office or tied up with the daycare so that this problem can be solved. So it was not only about prioritizing budgets, the things that you were already doing. It was also about maybe coming up with new initiatives to solve. Maybe for personal illness, you came up with another initiative where Immunity Builder Week would make sense just before weather changes. The kind of food you serve in the canteen and the kind of posters that are put across and the kind of mailers people are sent, or the way you celebrate health weeks is about 1 month of eating Immunity Builder Week before weather changes. So one thing that they did was that existing initiatives were prioritized. The next thing that they did was that they got with new initiatives to go about solving the problems which were in line with reasons for absenteeism. And not only that, they did not only stop at that, they started coming up with new policies that would solve problem of absenteeism. So for example, if we are talking about 14% because of entitlement mentality. Now, what is entitlement mentality? Entitlement mentality is largely, I have sick leaves and I have casual leaves, but I'm not sick, but still I'll take the leave because it's my birthright, right? I am entitled for this leave, but the leave is being given for a reason. And when they did this whole maths in terms of productivity loss and sick leave and casual leave, they realized that it's better to make all sick leave earned leave, which means if you don't take that leave, you get money, right? And that completely changed the perception of people, because earlier, if it was about entitlement mentality, that was completely gone now, because if you now take leave, you will lose money, right? Or if it is about stress, then coming up with a flexible timing policy or work from home policy. I mean, the whole world is working with work from home lately, but if we are talking about that, then yes, they came up with that, and that is something that did solve the problem of absenteeism. And all these three initiatives that were taken in terms of prioritization and new employee engagement initiatives and new policies that were taken in line with absenteeism led to the absenteeism being reduced from 7.2% to 3.8%. This is huge. This is absolutely solving business problem. This is absolutely strategic HR because you are talking about driving strategic initiative to achieve what an organization wants to achieve, right? Though still 2.5 to 3.5% it should have been, but the drop is huge from 7.8 to 3.8%. It's close to 50% job and it's almost the job done. I'm sure in the year to come, they would have absolutely cracked it, right? So this is what we are talking about when we are talking about driving strategic HRM, which is very, very important, right? Now with this, let me quickly then talk about what it takes. Now, this is what we have discussed so far. We have talked about strategic HR, we have talked about what it takes, how it takes, etc. But then all of us, in fact, entire humanity right now, there is a lot of uncertain time. Never before, I think we have seen times like these, right? And what would then help us lead these uncertain times, which is very, very important, right? So as professionals, and not only from a professional front, from a personal front and from a professional front, but especially from a professional front, do we have an opportunity? Or do we have, because with every crisis, I think there lies an opportunity. And are we able to recognize the opportunity is very, very important, right? Because I'm sure that the world is going through a difficult time. A lot of organizations going through a difficult time. There would be a lot of people who are going through a difficult time. There would be a lot of people who would have lost jobs, etc. But then do we sit with folded hands or we do something that helps us achieve what we have always dreamt to achieve? So one thing that it's very, very important for us to identify where the industry, where the world of HR is heading, right? And if we are able to understand what are the next gen skills that are needed, and basically next gen skill is about the best of jobs. I'm not saying all jobs, I'm saying best of jobs with best of organization is into consulting and solutioning, right? Is into strategy, is into understanding best practices by best of organizations, right? Is about cost saving and enhancing productivity, and is about understanding totality of human resource management, right? These are very, very important aspects that we need to know, right? So if we identify this, if we are able to identify this of what business partner practices are, and if we are able to identify what solutioning may look like or what strategy may look like, right? And not only just strategy, how that strategy gets applied actually on ground. That is something which is very, very important. Then we are so valuable that we are invaluable. And that will happen by investing in self, right? I mean, we invest in devices, we invest in a lot of things, but investing in self is the key. In our profession is the key, right? And that is what would make us stand out. So if tomorrow you are able to, if you aim at working with the best salaries and best organizations, right, then you have to stand out. And then this fight would be tougher in times to come because there would be fewer roles and there would be more applicants. There is no doubt about that. And this would be across levels. It's not that it would only be for freshers, it would be across levels. So standing out is the key. And that would only happen, as I said, is through mastering next gen skill and by becoming invaluable and also understanding where the world is heading. And for this, I have a wonderful certification for you, which is CHRMP Advanced certification or the HRBP certification. It is called Advanced HRBP certification, right? Now, it is a very, very well crafted certification. It is done over a period of 12 weeks. It has different topics. We are talking about job analysis, where you understand job segregation and job descriptions and job specification, to you understanding competency mapping. I could not explain competency in detail because of lack of time, but understanding indicators and matrices and frameworks, understanding the whole mapping structure is something that you would understand, which would be very, very interesting. And we would talk about talent acquisition, which would talk about the strategy part and its implementation part and the selection design part and the manpower planning part and how efficient planning can reduce the number of people who are needed part. All this is something that you would learn, and you will learn competency-based interviewing or behaviorally-based interviewing. Very, very interesting. It is not about asking, tell me about yourself, why should we hire you, where do you see yourself 5 years from now kind of questions anymore. It is about if somebody is innovation has to be checked, creativity has to be checked, interpersonal skills have to be checked, leadership capability have to be checked, what kind of questions you should ask, and how would you cater to that, right? It's something that is taught. Managing and appraising performance is very, very important, critical incident, and then you are talking about MBO, and then we are talking about appraisals, and we are talking about balanced scorecards, and we are talking about all that you need to learn in terms of managing and appraising performance. And we are talking about L&D, one of my favorite modules. A lot of methods, for example, from a effectiveness perspective, we know a firm being given in a scale of 1 to 5. So first of all, 1 to 5 is not that good a scale. 1 to 4 is a better scale, and why it is important for us to understand. And not only that, there is Kirkpatrick L2, L3, L4 as well, right? And how exactly L2 is done and how exactly L3 is done. All that is something that is taught to you. And then triangulation is taught to you, and Corbs is taught to you, and Bloom's is taught to you, and so the learning is huge in terms of L&D part as well, right? We are talking about employee engagement, attrition rate, absenteeism rate, exit interviews, employee initiatives, budgeting. All that you need to know is something that is taught to you. We are talking about compensation benefit planning. This again is very interesting module, one of my favorites. Internal equity, external equity, individual equity, point plan, how competency gets mapped to job roles and job design, and how exactly pointer system is built to assign pay grades and pay salaries, and how it is populated for the entire organization. All of it is something that you go about learning. We are talking about HR policies, where we are talking about creation of policy, structuring of policy, linking policies to vision and mission. All this is something that is taught with the case discussion as well. We are talking about HR operations, which is about offer letter and appointment letter in terms of employment and joining formalities and leave management and background verification and contracts and service agreements. Anything and everything that you need to know in terms of HR operation is something also that is taught. So 10 modules, 10 deep modules is something that is taught to you. And the way we teach you is also very interesting. So everybody gets a login ID and password, and then there are these recorded sessions, which is in 4K videos, and we are talking about assignments and quizzes, etc. But to top it up is these expert-led sessions. So just like how this webinar is happening, not necessarily on a webinar format, but a meeting format where you are able to interact, talk, engage, clarify, understand better. Every Saturday is when the session, expert-led session happens, where we have industry experts taking you through this whole thing, and trainers like me who have worked with organizations, consulted organizations, and my team who would go about, taking you through this whole methodology of, so you learn at your own pace, and then Saturday you learn how exactly it works, and this happens for about 12 weeks. So for you to master these concepts, understand the best practices that happens across, understand the strategy, understand the execution, to be ready to upskill yourself to be able to handle things better. We are talking about nice 4K videos, as I said. Look at what Mukund has to say. Mukund is a CHRMP alumni working with Amazon as senior L&D business partner. Or if you are looking at Joanna, she's working for United Nations. These are CHRMPs who have been part of the CHRMP curriculum, loved it, and are proud CHRMPs. We are also talking about validation, and this validation is about getting certified by CHRMP and Pearson VUE. It's also about getting a digital blockchain verified digital badge that makes a lot of difference once you link it with your LinkedIn profile, etc. 20% more hits. And we are talking about a certificate of achievement, not a certificate of participation, a certificate of achievement, verifiable with a unique certification code, complete database, something which is maintained. Organizations verify it with us from time to time. You can also see our website in the resources. You can, on chrmp.com, you can see verified certificate as a link. So, that is something that you go about getting. We are also talking about a small gift for all webinar attendees, right? So everyone who is there with me right now, I have a wonderful gift for them. And the gift is that you get a 10% fee waive off on the course fee, right? So you get a 10% fee waive off on the course fee. We are talking about actual price being 24,780. What you have to pay is 22,302. You are saving 2,478. And if you are an international participant, we are talking about 340 USD becoming 306 USD, and you are saving 34 USD. Now, it doesn't only end here. What you also get is a 6-month academy membership. You get a 6-month academy membership, which is very, very interesting. We are talking about this academy access where you would be part of CHRMP Academy, where you would be able to access your course as well as events and resource hub and forums and groups and your activity feed, and you connect with other members. All this is something that you would be able to do, right? So we have people from different parts of the globe. We keep posting some awesome content on this, and then you have Resource Hub where a lot of knowledge is kept there. It's like an encyclopedia of human resource with so much information for you there, and then you can access your course from here. Not only access your course, you can access your expert-led sessions also. You can register through here itself. And so basically the whole package looks very, very good. You are not only getting 10% fee waive off, but also 6-month academy membership. And this includes 4K recorded sessions, 1-year LMS access. So you have 1-year LMS access, you have capstone project and case studies, you have ongoing support for 12 months. So just in case any new content gets added, you are allowed to re-attend those sessions if you want, right? Or it gets automatically added to the certification that you have gone about taking. If a new content, for example, we are releasing a module on diversity and inclusion, and this would become part of your curriculum at no extra cost, right? And we are talking about global certification with CHRMP and Pearson VUE. We are talking about a complimentary recertification. We are talking about a blockchain verified digital credential, and we are talking about alumni network access. So HRBP certification gives you alumni status also for CHRMP, and all this is a webinar special pricing, right? So all of it in terms of that you're seeing on screen in terms of 4K recorded sessions, 1-year LMS access, capstone projects and case studies, and ongoing support and global certification and recertification and blockchain verified digital badge and alumni status is something that you are getting. The way to do it is this. I'm sharing this link in the chat box for all of you so that you are able to make use of this feature. We have an orientation on Thursday. We have a batch starting this Saturday. So people who are interested, who are looking at upskilling themselves, who want to be more relevant professionally, and who feel that this is information that probably that you had in the last 1 hour, which was not with you, and you feel this information was good, and this speaks in terms of the quality that CHRMP brings in, then probably investing in a 12-week certification would make sense, because there would be so much more learning with every passing day and with every passing week. Then certainly I think you should be doing this certification. Because I think one thing that I realized, and this is a participant coming in telling me that, I always believed, who recently got CHRMP certified. So she came and she was telling me that I always believed that I would learn through experiences, right? And I always believed in that. And what I have lost in the process is time, because for experience, you need time. Right? So though I have gained experience, I imagine what I have learned, what you have taught us in CHRMP, if I learned 7 years back, right? What would it mean to me? Because then what I would know to fuel my growth and take my career forward would be completely different. So yes, knowledge through experience is good, but then it takes time. We will save a lot of time for you. So a lot of professionals who have this feeling that, okay, why am my career not growing? Or why is my career stuck? Why am I not working for the best of organizations? Or my colleague moved ahead and, why am I here, right? I think that's largely because we have not led. We may have pushed decisions. We may have not taken call. But I think we belong to knowledge industry. and investing in knowledge and our own growth with very good information, good content, I think is gonna fuel the growth, and it's gonna take your career to the next level, which is very, very important, guys, right? So with this, let me quickly come to taking all your questions. Please type in your questions in the Q&A box. I would like to answer all the questions that are posted in the Q&A box. Bhargavi has asked, what is the major difference between HR operation, HR specialist, and HR BP? Bhargavi, as I said, that HR BP is the model name. It is also called a strategic HR model. So if you just look at strategic HR model, one vertical is HR operations, the other vertical is COE, which is Center of Excellence, and the third model is HR BP. Now, as I said, HR operations involves everything to do with process and everything to do with documents and everything to do with file management and everything to do with administration. And largely it represents the back-end part of human resource management. And when we talk about COE, or what you have written as HR specialist, we are largely talking about people development and front-end or people-facing role of human resource management. So when we talk about talent development, or when we talk about compensation planning, or when we talk about talent acquisition, or when we talk about HR analytics, we are largely talking about these areas which are helping organizations strategize and implement better and help in people development and people acquisition. And when we talk about HRBP, it is about walking along with the business hand in hand in terms of understanding and catering to all their human resource needs so that they are able to achieve their respective goals in a better manner, right? Can you share more light on HR shared services role? HR shared services is nothing but more of HR operations. It's some organizations call it HR shared services for a reason, largely because it is something which is not specific to one vertical, but it is shared. Sometimes HR shared services is a term which is used when we have two similar organizations, two sister concerns catering back to one HR department for all their HR needs. So then the services are shared. So it can be broadly used. It can be also used as specific to how I said earlier, right? And is talent development similar to learning and development? Yes, talent development is it's an extension to learning and development. It is learning and development, but with more robust systems and processes where focus on takeaways and focus on candidates' change in behavior and what is impact on business through learning being much more, right? So it's not only about just giving a feedback form and knowing training was good or bad, right? It is much, much more and much, much more deeper in terms of the talent development vertical. How will this certification help an L&D professional? So Aman, there are two aspects to it. One is that the talent development vertical is huge. It's very well done. Apart from that, I think competency mapping and performance management, these three verticals within this would make a lot of sense to you, because from a L&D person professional point of view, competency mapping has to play a huge role. And not only that, I think you also have to, why is training being conducted? Because when there's a gap between desired and done performance, that's when L&D comes into picture a lot of times, right? So that gives you complete view of L&D from an HR perspective. Secondly, if you have better understanding of all HR processes, then as I said, the growth prospects in human resource, even if you are from a specialist vertical like L&D, would be pretty good. But at the same time, people do only take talent development specialized certification as well. So if you go to chrmp.com, you can opt only for the talent development certification as well. So that is something that you can go and be on the website and take a decision on that. Advanced has talent development, competency mapping, performance management, talent acquisition, and a lot of other modules as I showed all of you, right? Abhishek has written, I'm looking forward to get enrolled in some ERP HCM module. Please guide me upon the same, that which tool would be good to go with and how. So Abhishek, there are two things to it. I think a lot of times words on SAP or PeopleSoft does attract us a lot. And we feel that by knowing this, we create very good prospect for ourselves. So let me tell you that this perception would have been true 5 years, 10 years back when there was dearth of SAP professionals, etc. Right? Now, what is happening largely is that a lot of organizations which have SAP module or PeopleSoft module, unless you do not have relevant experience in HCM, experience, not certification, or not some generic certification, not from the authorized, but somebody else, right? When we talk about, if you do not have experience of implementing HCM, and that is a mandatory criteria for hire, they will not hire you, right? Majority of organizations, 9 out of 10 organizations, and organizations which may show interest in hiring you will, and where it is not a mandatory criteria, they will any which way train you. Because I'm sure with bigger organizations where it is being implemented, there is good amount of customization specific to their processes that would have been done, right? So a lot of times when technology keeps on changing, so every time something new gets added, so a lot of times what you invest on, and if it's not immediately, especially with technology, not useful, for example, concepts of CHRMP would stand for next 10 years, but technology, if you're working on, then versions in 10 years would be some 5 versions or 10 versions, right? So it might not be that meaningful, right? So first of all, if you're doing it from a certified vendor of SAP, it's kind of costly, but at the same time, from a job perspective, you would not see much happening. So it's a good keyword to look at, but then I would say that that would not be the job change or hiring criteria for a lot of organizations, right? So take a more informed decision. That's what I would suggest. It's important to take a more informed decision. For HRBP certification, is there any criteria or prior experience or knowledge required? So yes, if you have 2 years experience, that's a good prerequisite in terms of doing advanced certification or HRBP certification. If you do not have, you can go for foundation certification, which is for 0 to 2. That is also, you go to chrmp.com, you can look at the foundation certification, and that could also go about helping you. What we are talking is more in terms of advanced certification. Any doubts, any questions, please feel free to ask anyone. Anyone would like to ask any questions? Anything I can help you with? Anything with HR, anything with analytics, anything with this certification, anything you would like to know? +91 is the country code, and there are some numbers that I have gone about sharing. Just in case you want to know the details, you can please feel free to reach out to our certification advisors. Also, as I said, the orientation for the batch is on Thursday, and the batch starts this Saturday. So if you feel, as I said again, if you feel that knowing all this, what the certification contains, and looking at our quality, if you feel that this is meaningful and in line with what you want to pursue on and how you want to develop your career, please go ahead and register yourself, right? Okay, great. So it was great interacting with all of you, and thank you for some wonderful questions. I hope to see you guys on board. Thank you so much again.